I think we should talk about Siren Song a little bit. I think it'd be interesting. We can have a little balanced discussion here because there was something I wanted to address. The one question that I have gotten more than anything else is, why is Spirits Unleashed bad and why is Siren Song so good? I think first of all, it's because Siren Song is in the 1-drop region. It's in Bilgewater, and Bilgewater actually has like Reaver's Row. They have Jack Taskmaster, right? All these 1-drop enablers, and they also have good 1-drops like this card, the Shell Shockers. This is actually just like kind of nuts for a lot of decks. Being able to play a 1-drop for free while you bank mana for your future spells is super good. So there is that, right? It's also in the Evelyn region, and I think there's less to say about that. I actually think it's worse in the Evelyn region, strangely enough, because it only buffs husks, whereas Bilgewater has like direct enablers for 1-drops. And then if you go to Spirits Unleashed, right? What will happen in both scenarios with Siren Song? Like, the best way to play Siren Song is probably like passing turn 1, passing turn 2, and then playing Siren Song on turn 3, right? So on turn 3, you have a husk, you can play a 1-drop, and then you can start just popping off. That's the first difference, because if you do that with Spirits Unleashed, you pass turn 1, you pass turn 2, you play this on turn 3. Best case scenario is you deal 1 to everything and you kill a couple of your opponent's units, right? That is best case scenario. That is literally it. Because the best thing you could do after spending that 5 mana when you have 6 available is you get to play a 1-drop. And if you're playing this with Evelyn, like I played Evelyn Udyr, for example, and if you get the Spirits Unleashed off, you start going Galactic, right? But you start going Galactic after turn 4. It's not even turn 4 if you play this on turn 3. It's after turn 4, like turn 5 onwards. When you play your Eve, you consume a husks. So this doesn't even summon a husk. You just give everything +1/+1. So you kind of want to already have a board. You want to be okay against this deal 1 to everything. But best case scenario, you play a 1-drop, and the best 1-drop in the Failure region is Omen Hawk. That's it. You get a 2/2 with no keywords. If you play Siren Song on turn 3, you get a husk that is a 1/2 with a random keyword, and then you get to play a 1-drop on top of that. It will suck up the husk, so you have like at least a 4/4, because that 1-drop is also going to be buffed. So what will very often happen, and this will directly lose you the game depending on the type of deck you're playing, they will just play the Clerk. And this is a 4/4 with lifesteal plus a random keyword after Siren Song. That is enough to stabilize the tempo loss that you got from those early turns. But very often that's not even the case, because of Shell Shocker, because you could play like another 1-drop. And I think that's so ridiculous, right? There is no tempo loss with Siren Song. You play it on turn 3, you get 2 1-drops. You play Spirits Unleashed on turn 3, you get a Omen Hawk that is a 2/2. I would like to find a way on like what can they possibly do to nerf Siren Song. It's probably gotta be like 6 mana. I think jumping straight from 4 to 6 mana like Promising Future would be fine. They can also do like grant 1 cost allies everywhere +1/+0, so that's a little bit easier to deal with. You don't just like, if they play their Divine Clerk, it's a 4/2 instead of a 4/4. I think Siren Song would be a really interesting card if it just straight up didn't hit 1-drops. I disagree. That has never been a good deck though. Yeah, I think at 6 mana you would still play this, but at least like you use your entire turn 3, and you can't just play 2 1-drops that are buffed after. Like, let's say you play this on turn 3, you play 2 1-drops, and then on turn 4 you play 4 more 1-drops. It's like you're summoning units that are basically 2-drops. It's like you're filling your board with like 10 or 12 mana worth of units with just 1-drops. But the thing is, Evelyn has been bad for a year, and also 1-drop archetypes have been bad for a year. Of course, you play 1-drops everywhere, but you don't go like all in on that concept. There are some really cool 1-drop enablers. I've always liked building Jack Taskmaster decks if it's more than just like Powder Pandemonium. Like, imagine doing it with Sand Soldier or something. It's really fun. 1-drop decks have been fun but unplayable. Evelyn decks have been fun but unplayable. Like, I don't think designers deserve to get shit for this. I really think they do. I think this is an extremely clever card. It ties 2 unplayable archetypes together, and I think that's brilliant. It's just overtuned. It's crazy overtuned. It's way too strong, and it enabled some really degenerate decks that nobody likes playing against, because you're literally getting outvalued by 1-drops. That's like, that's weird, right? I think if you're going to get outvalued by 1-drops, it should be through something like Jack Taskmaster, where with Jack Taskmaster, you have to actually plunder. So you can't just like drop the Taskmaster on turn 2 and then go to town. No, you have to hit first. So it's unlikely that you even get value from it for that turn. Unless you have like a warning shot, but you know, that's that thing aside. So another thing about husks, of course, can I filter by husks? Yeah, so one more thing about husks, obviously, is that these have always been frustrating. These have always been miserable to play against from the very beginning. Nobody liked them. The coolest thing about husks is not this random keyword. It's like cute, it's clever and all, but we really didn't need this. We really didn't need to get a spell shield husk or an elusive husk. We didn't. None of these. The coolest thing with husk was the kill, the death synergy, like Evelyn Viego. That was an awesome deck that was enabled because you get something that you can kill every turn. You had like these Netherglade Collector, whatever, the 5-mana 2/4 that drains 1 every time something dies. We even have the dog now, the new Grave Companion. Let's see, this one. I think that's like the coolest thing you can do with husk, just like death synergy. And make your champion like a little bit more chunky, like +1 health. But the keywords like just getting a free win from Spell Shield or Elusive should not exist. I'm the biggest Pant and Kaisa fanboy. I mean, yeah, Kaisa Evelyn especially. I think that was a really fun deck. But in that deck, at least it felt like there was a little bit of purpose to getting several different keywords. Because you want to level your Kaisa. And you have to do that with like a casino roll every single turn. It's like, okay, I got fearsome, now I want something that isn't fearsome, and I'm praying I never get quick attack because my Kaisa already has that. That was like the less fun aspect, but I do enjoy that whole archetype, that idea behind the deck where you have to summon these random husks to hopefully level your Kaisa with it. That was fun. Sometimes you get regen and you get like a little bit of a better blocker. Sometimes you get overwhelm and then you don't have to like copy something else. That was really cool. But then you look at other decks, and it's like, especially with Hate Spike being played in like Nass's Thresh or Nass's Kindred at the time, and then sometimes they just get like a free win because they roll a good keyword. That was nonsense, man. Hate Spike is literally just committing crimes against all Runeterra players, against card game players everywhere. Even I did really not enjoy that. So how do I really think that Siren Song needs to get nerfed? Health should be gone, absolutely. I fully think that health needs to not be a thing in 1-drop decks. There is absolutely no reason that my opponent's 1-drop should have higher stats than my Victor, right? I could play a Victor on turn 4 and it'll get outstatted by the first Divine Clerk they play, and I cannot punch through that. It's impossible. We're all losing games right now because on turn 4 they play Siren Song and then they play a Fizz on top of it, right? With like, I don't know, impact or something, even like the worst possible thing from the husk that they could get, impact. It will still blow you out because Fizz is just a 4/4. It's completely ridiculous. So it's kind of weird for me to talk about, and this is also the reason that I'm talking about it late. Number one, I am not much of a competitive player. I don't join opens. I don't join tournaments. I don't really care about them. I would like to compete again, but definitely not in this meta, right? Glad I skipped that one. And second of all, I've been gone for a week. I've been back for, 5 days or something now. So I get to experience everything that I've missed out on. All those 2020 Zolanis on turn 7.
Siren Song? More like Siren Too Strong.
Stinken mit Schinken. Thank you for the 5 months. Yeah, exactly. So if I had to put this Siren Song meta, even though I've not experienced most of it, if I had to rate it somewhere, I would definitely say it's probably in the top 10, but I don't think it would be in the top 5. I simply haven't played enough. If number one for me, like the top 3 most frustrating metas, honestly, probably 1 is still Aziralia, but Seraphine is such a stupidly close second that I don't even know if it might be the first place. And then number 3 is the Kaisa meta. I think that was it. I didn't really mind the Sundisk meta that much because Victor also got buffed, and all I did was play Victor Riven. So what about Nami Lee? So Nami Lee was like the first season where I really tried to play competitively, and I kind of enjoyed it. But as far as like that deck goes and the whole equipment meta, no, I didn't like it. I think it might be like 5th place or something. Maybe slightly outside the top 5 for me. The Def Not hotfixing Siren Song makes me a bit sad. Yeah, so I get that, right? But there's a few things to consider there too. First of all, Riot was on break for a week. And we have a shorter patch cycle. Usually patch cycles are 4 weeks. This one is 3 weeks. Shout out to LOR Report. Marshall told me this. Apparently, the last expansion or last cycle was 1 week longer. So this one is 1 week shorter. I should call it season, I guess. The Glory and Ivori season was 1 week longer. So Heart of the Hunters is going to be 1 week shorter. So we're getting the balance patch now, this Wednesday, instead of in a week. The Wednesday a week after. Actually, yeah, I can open the calendar. I think I'm supposed to go to the bottom, right? Okay, so here's the LOR Report calendar. So it's the 16th right now. So today was the open. We're still getting the Americas open, right? I always like watching these. So on the 18th, we get the dev stream. And then on the 19th, we get the balance patch. It will be live. Yeah, so this makes it easier to see. This is now everybody knows. 19th, we will be getting rid of the Siren Song. Now, here's something that we might also need to talk about. What are going to be the top dogs of the meta if Siren Song gets nerfed? And of course, it will get nerfed, right? I think there is a very good chance that we're gonna see a Return of Wrench deck with Jinx. I think there already is one, right? With Jinx and Cannon. This is going to be one of the better decks, for sure. Champion Strength is probably another one. Because we already see Champion Strength decks just being ridiculous, right? I'm expecting Return of Wrench, I'm expecting Karma, I'm expecting Champion Strength, like you guys said. Oops. Yeah, this one for sure. Jinnar is not a really good one, yeah. Jinnar, definitely. All Seeing Oracle would be a really good card after the patch. I'm afraid you're right. This card, as much as it pains me to say this, was always one turn too late. It wasn't very good because you want to deny the Siren Song with this, and you can't do that because Siren Song is played on 3 and this is played on 4. So if I had to guess, yeah, this will be an okay card after the meta. If there is a good Ionia deck, that's important, right? There needs to be an actual Ionia deck for this to be playable. Are we gonna see a playable Ionia deck? I don't know. I hope Karma Set gets nerfed somehow. Karma Set is going to be on the top of the meta again. And it's been, how many months? 4 months or something? 4 months where Karma Set was just one of the best decks in the game. And I'm pretty tired of that. So I hope that gets a nerf as like, just to be ahead of the curve, right? However, if Karma Set is going to be the best deck in the game again, because of nerfs, I will just be spamming Poro King. That's all I'm gonna do. We're just gonna be Poro King mains, because Poros smash Karma Set. And that's what it's all about. But yeah, that's I just wanted to make that quick comparison between Siren Song and Spirits Unleashed, and why I think that, you know, Siren Song is so much better, even though Spirits Unleashed technically is the better card. It's just Spirits Unleashed is an actual tempo loss, and Siren Song is definitely not, because you get to play your 1-drops right after. So how I feel about that. Actually, we could also watch. Roy made a video, right? Should we do some more React content? What do you guys think? All right, let me close this. We'll watch this. So, quick shout out, Skilled Roy. I'm gonna send the link in the chat right now. Give him a subscription. Give him a like on the video. This is the Husk Problem video essay.
It was just under a year ago during Set 6 of Legends of Runeterra when Evelyn was revealed to players. And honestly, I think even from the first moment I saw her and her mechanic, I was immediately annoyed. You see, Evelyn herself is mostly fine. The gimmick of a champion who levels in and out of their
Louder?
Level 2 form is actually pretty interesting and clearly has a bunch of success, as we've already had Gnar and now we have Nidalee. But my problem with her and respective cards is actually quite simple. You see, I really dislike Husks. Now, for those of you who somehow stumbled onto this video...
Okay, I'm gonna be really annoying here. Hold on. Wait. The card pops out already half on screen, no? Yeah, see, it pops out when it's already on screen. Roy, I have the same editing presets as you. You gotta fix this. All right.
Like Husks. Now, for those of you who somehow stumbled onto this video outside of the current reality where 4-mana Siren Song is 20% of the game's meta, let me explain what Husks are. Husk generator cards are pretty varied in their costs and stat totals, but their mechanics remain the same. When a Husk is summoned, it creates one of 10 different Husks. Each Husk has 1 health and a random keyword associated to that Husk. Whenever you play another unit, that Husk dies and you get its stats and keywords onto the new unit. So generally, this means that the buff is typically going to be 1 health and a random keyword. But if you were to hypothetically buff the husk, the buff would also transfer. So therefore, a 0-1 husk being given +1/+1 now results in 1 power and 2 health stats being given to the next card being played, which is a pretty substantial difference, and that's probably the crux of why Siren Song became so powerful. But you see, the problem with husks specifically is not just their power level. Only recently have husks truly started to make a significant dent in the meta due to the aforementioned Siren Song. So for just under a year, Evelynn has struggled to make any real substantial impact in the metagame, only really seeing a little bit of fringe play. So how has a mechanic that was widely regarded as underpowered suddenly become overpowered with the release of 1 card? And why are so many people frustrated with husks? Well, you see, there's quite a few problems, but number 1 is pretty simple.
Problem 1.
Let's start with the obvious, shall we?
Right,
there are 10 husks and 10 random keywords associated with them. We've got keywords as low impact as
Siren Song is not
impact,
a problem, Cap.
but we also have keywords that immediately warp the game around them, such as spell, shield, and elusive. This means when the opponent plays their cards again.
Exactly these two. So what I keep saying on stream, and I've said this I've said this like before we even got Siren Song, it wasn't worth complaining about Evelynn because she just wasn't very good. There was no good Evelynn deck, so it's like, why are we complaining about something that isn't even like irrelevant in the meta? But elusive and spell shield, dude, these 2 keywords need to be changed. I think brash is the obvious one. One of these should be changed to brash, and then we need another keyword, but there isn't one. So if Hallow doesn't work, Augment doesn't work, I don't know. Hot take, Siren Song wouldn't be that broken if it weren't for Divine Clerk or Zlania. If the Fizz decks with Reaver's Row don't even play that anymore, it would still be very broken. I think Augment doesn't really work because it's so specific. Augment needs creator cards, and Evelynn decks don't run that. I don't know if Barrier works either. That's Faded maybe, but I don't think so either. Lifesteal is a big no. Lifesteal would be as bad as these two if they made Lifesteal. 100%. It might even be worse.
Against you, the game state changes massively on a game-to-game basis, arguably more so than any other deck out there. The opponent's Evelynn could be an impact and tough Evelynn, or it could be an elusive and spell shield Evelynn. This means that your deck could very easily compete and defeat one Evelynn, but be completely powerless to another, all because you're in that 1 of 10 games where that opponent got that specific husk. This means from the very start of her release, Evelynn has always been a champion that feasts or famines due to high and low rolls, meaning she can be entirely useless or massively powerful. But here's the issue. These 2 possibilities really suck for both players. You see, as the player of Evelynn, it can feel really bad when you get a bunch of husks that aren't useful or low roll. And as an opponent, it can feel really bad when your opponent gets all the relevant ones or a high roll. But hang on, Roy, wait a second. If there's good and bad results possible, doesn't that mean it's balanced? Well, the problem with the randomness is that I'm not talking about what is or isn't statistically balanced, but what is fun and enjoyable for the game overall. Imagine, if you will, the following card. 1 mana, Chaos Bolt. Flip a coin. If heads, you win the game. If tails, you lose the game. Now, this card is statistically balanced, as it should result in a 50-50 every time, but just because it's balanced doesn't mean balanced, as it should result in a 50-50 every time. But just because—
Okay, hold on. No. I'm gonna be triggered if I don't find out what that says. Period and comma? Oh. Please think of this card in isolation, please. I know you would never cast this well ahead, therefore making it so that the card would actually have a higher win rate. Because of that, this is just for the sake of this example. Okay, thanks. That's good that Roy clarified that. Also, I didn't know that about the period and comma. Thank you.
But just because it's balanced doesn't mean that it's a particularly enjoyable card to play with or against, as it removes a big part of what many players love about card games, which is, of course— Now, I know the first thing that some people might say as a way to stop Evelynn is that you should just kill the husks. The husks, after all, only have 1 health and have no power to defend themselves. You know, at least they shouldn't. But the problem often with removing husks is that it's extremely detrimental to one's own game plan. Some crucial cards that could answer them without setting themselves too far behind, such as Vile Feast and Pokestick, were both rotated to the Eternal format, and other options such as Mystic Shot often put you on the back foot for mana, setting you further behind. But of course, let's remember, due to the nature of the high and low rolls of these husks, using a Mystic Shot to kill an elusive husk can feel really annoying when you shouldn't have had to spend that Mystic Shot if they had hit, say, a Impact impact husk instead, or one that's not useful.
Yeah.
Not to mention some husks, such as the Spell Shield husk, aren't really able to be interacted with in a conventional sense. After all, you'd rather keep your Mystic Shot in hand to pop that same Spell Shield later in most cases. Now you'll notice here, I'm talking mostly about spells, and if you've played Legends of Runeterra for any amount of time, there are plenty of combat keywords that allow the player to dictate combat, and perhaps you can kill the husks before they are being used. There is, of course, a few problems with this. The husks do not have vulnerable, unlike a similar type of card, Kegs, meaning it's quite difficult to kill them reliably, as you need to have a challenger unit or a way to make their units vulnerable. But even this strategy has some glaring issues. Even in this hypothetical situation where you have a challenger unit in hand or a unit in your hand that can make something vulnerable, they can simply play another unit to immediately cash out on that husk. Adding insult to injury, husks don't even transfer negative keywords, so your vulnerable will just disappear into thin air. And of course, let's not forget, all of this assumes that you actually even have the attack token. If you're an aggressive deck or a mid-range deck that focuses on the board, you might not often have resources or the attack tokens to viably kill the husks that appear, making interaction either a trap as you lose out on cards and tempo, or just outright impossible. And finally, because Evelyn makes husks at the end of each round, there will be times where you will literally not have any chance to cast a response whatsoever to any husk that appears from her. If they manage to get an elusive or spell shield husk at the end of the turn, this all but guarantees a massive buff with no way to reasonably stop it. Now let me make something known here. For as long as Legends of Runeterra has been around, it has been marketed as skill outplaying luck. And for what it's worth, a vast majority of the game, I would say that is incredibly accurate. In fact, the topic of randomness has come up once before with the inclusion of Bilgewater all the way back in Legends of Runeterra initial release. Bilgewater as a region has many random mechanics that are typically based on the player having to guarantee their outcomes through working through the various mechanics. I went through this with the Seraphim video. There is a fantastic article that really cemented a lot of great information on randomness over on their website, a link of which will be in the description below. In that very same article, they mention something quite specific, that another way to look at something being random being healthy involves its impact. Generally, the more impact something has, the more work they're going to ask of the player to get the result that they wanted. They also mention agency, such as how much agency a player has to adapt to random elements. What information can you leverage, and what do you control that can affect its variance and uncertainty? Cards like Make It Rain, for example, are shown because the goal in many decks that play it is to manipulate the board into having a lot of low health targets.
So something really important when we talk about randomness is that people need to realize that card games are inherently random, and randomness is very good. It'd be really boring if we knew exactly like what card was on top of our deck, you know? If we're not all Echo players. We don't all play the Predict archetype with Zillion Echo. But it'd be like, if there is no randomness, every game would play out the same, and it's much less like you're playing an actual game where you have to adapt and improvise. It would be like, you know, you're playing Dark Souls and you're just like memorizing the patterns, right? And that's not bad. Of course, there is also some randomness in that, depending on what move the boss uses next. But it's all just about, you know, creating outcomes, but lowering the impact as much as possible for those random outcomes. It's like that coin card that Roy showed, right? If you flip the coin, it's 50-50. Do you win right now or do you lose right now? It's literally 50-50. But the impact on that is so high that there is no, even if you win, it doesn't feel like you deserve that win. But if you play Make a Ring, like there is 2 1-health units, there's 1 2-health unit, and then there's a Nexus. And you snipe one of the 1 health, you snipe the other one with 2 health, that goes down to 1, and then you hit the Nexus. It's like, yeah, that's, you know, that's about the average outcome. But sometimes you get lucky and you hit both of those 1-health units. You hit the one with 2 health, and you have a parlay, and then you just like, you know, it feels good, but it's not like it's automatically game over, because you knew that if Make It Rain was used, there was also always a possibility that the outcome for you was going to be, you know, at least somewhat bad, because that's why cards are used. It's not a card game anymore if no randomness at all. Yeah, exactly, because you know exactly what you're drawing. And you can create the setup, yeah, that too.
You know what's not random? The number 8. It's just infinity flipped upwards.
That is the opposite of random. The number 8 for 8 months. Darkest Soul, thank you. This is the only game I've never played with this level of randomness. This is the only game I've never played. You mean this is the only game you've ever played with this level of randomness? Because there are some cards that definitely take it up to the next level. For example, Hearthstone, right? The obvious answer here. Runeterra players like to meme on Hearthstone because, oh, this is the game that actually has all the randomness. I remember Unstable Portal. I remember Yoxaron from Hearthstone. Just cast like 20 random spells and see what happens. Runeterra tries to control it for the most part. And in a very good way. Even Riptide Rex. You're playing an 8 mana card. Of course, 9 out of 10 times the outcome is going to be pretty devastating. And even if Riptide Rex misses, it still goes to the Nexus. Like they even thought of like that worst case scenario. You're spending 8 mana. Runeterra is harmless in terms of random effect. There are definitely some examples of decks that take randomness to the next level. And I would say right now, Husks is or has always been one of them. But now that Husks are good, you're really feeling, you know, that effect that has just been like just below the surface, waiting to become powerful. And then everybody can mold at the Elusive Husk and at the Spell Shield Husk. And the other one is Seraphine. I don't even think Nora. No, Nora is not that bad. Nora is almost entirely balanced in my point. Because Nora's portals, it's not about what unit you get. It's about getting a unit. The real randomness in Nora's portals is does the boon go to target number 1, 2, 3, or 4? But the actual unit that comes from the portal does 9 out of 10 times just not matter. And that's also the frustrating part, because that's why control decks use Nora, just to like patch up that weakness where they don't always have blockers when they need them. But the units themselves that come from Nora's portals are often, you know, there are high rolls, there are low rolls, but often they're not the culprit of why Nora's portals feel bad to play against. It's very much the number of cards that the portal goes on to. But yeah, it's all about impact of randomness. There are always random effects, and keeping them in the game is important, and keeping them minor is also important, like Make It Rain. I think Make It Rain is a fantastic card. So well designed.
So that any outcome of Make It Rain is a strong one, or in best cases, the only one. The Husk cards, in my opinion, are against both of these 2 points. They are fairly high impact in some cases, without much work, as the player plays effectively the same way to get their Husks in the first place. And secondly, there's often very little a player can do to affect the variance and uncertainty before the Husk is played. And as we've mentioned, some of the Husks actually remove ways to interact, such as Elusive stopping blocking and Spell Shield stopping spells. So these problems feel pretty brutal, but why are complaints for Husks only coming out now, about a year later? Well, you see, that's the last problem with Husks. As I've been going over on in this video, randomness is inherent within Husks. With no way to control which Husk shows up, there's a large issue with high rolls and low rolls. But what this really means in the case of Husks is that they're almost always going to be underpowered or overpowered. Historically, most Husk generating cards haven't really seen that much play. But let's talk about 2 that actually saw more play outside of Evelyn decks. The first is actually when they buffed one of Evelyn's cards, Hate Spike. This resulted in Viego decks running the card due to the massive amount of synergy with it. As an efficient damage spell, it was already quite good, but the Husk random keyword advantage was simply a small additional benefit on top of its power. But because they didn't really run any other Husk cards, the potential for a high roll was immense, and even on a low roll, they didn't run the card explicitly for the Husk keywords. This meant that the card was strong even in its weakest state, and then became absolutely miserable when their giant Viego hit the board with a Spell Shield or an Elusive Overwhelm. This also happened with the card Domination, who was a Shuriman card that made Husks. This card actually saw play with the resurgence of Azir Relia, using its ability to buff the blades and the Sand Soldiers that were played. While it seems fine with that enhanced effect on its own, plenty of Spell Shield and Elusive Azir Relias were made that would instantly win the game on the spot. And this is the crux of where we are currently at with Husks. Even assuming the lowest rolls of Siren Song, the card is ridiculously powerful with Husks, and if they hit a single high roll or 2, it can often feel like all agency has been taken out of your game, all because they simply happen to hit a low chance of countering your game plan. You know, much like how every game-to-game interaction with Husks is wildly volatile, so is its ability to be balanced. Husks and Evelyn, by extension, are always going to feel too powerful or too weak, because to make Husk cards feel strong, they have to kind of ignore that Husk generation and become strong cards on their own. But thanks to all the swinging possibilities of Husks, it also means that cards designed this way will randomly high roll and change into massively overpowered cards instead. And at the end of the day, I feel like Evelyn deserves, you know, a little better than to be a champion who has to rely on randomness just so she can feel like she can be played competitively. So I decided to ask the Legends of Runeterra community for their thoughts. How can we solve some of these problems, And let's take a look at some of the replies here. The first was by Frozen Thrall, and his idea is to make the pool deplete over time, meaning you can't get two of the same kind of husk before getting all the other ones first, meaning each sequential husk would help you better plan for a future one to show up. This would be a great example of the agency discussion
I don't think that fixes it.
It would also mean that if you managed to stop an elusive husk or a spell shield husk immediately, you could be certain they wouldn't get another one back.
That's really, really interesting, but I don't think that would fix it. Especially with Siren Song, right? With Siren Song, it's always the first one that matters the most. It's like the first 3 that matter the most. And it's not like with Weapon Master, you get to choose what husk you get. It would have to be like every time you try to summon a husk, you get to like choose one of 2 that you want, like the Weapon Master or something. But that would also be broken. It's a cool thought, but I don't think it would fix the problem at all. Because how often do you summon 10 husks? Evelyn isn't even played with Siren Song anymore. I'm not sure.
Quickly. The next suggestion by Absolution is to make the pool not random at all, but rather sequential. This would mean that you would rarely, if ever, see a single husk card being splashed into decks, which is a bit of a sad thing for those cards, but it also means they could really balance out the husks further by averaging how fast players get husks and the associated rewards that they give. Elusive and Spell Shield husks, for example, could be placed later and maybe even give you stat buffs to reward you for going all in on a husk strategy, with a predictable curve of power to get there. This curve could be changed and balanced independently even, allowing husks to possibly find a spot where they could be considered balanced and change according to new card releases and the meta. But I think Max, who does in fact have the tracks, said it best. The best decision here, in my opinion, is to full rework Evelyn, as she and her associated cards are simply unsatisfying. Of course, I'm sure the game designers over on the Legends of Runeterra team have considered many of these possible options, and I know reworking effectively a few dozen cards, including husks, would be a tall order. But I also think that simply just nerfing Siren Song only kicks the can down the road, delaying the inevitable next husk card that causes these frustrations to boil over again.
I do agree.
Anyways, thank you everyone so much for watching. My name has been The Skilled Roy. If you guys want to come check me out on Twitter and Discord, my links to those will be in the description below. I also have an announcement. I am getting back into streaming again after a bit long hiatus due to work and all sorts of shenanigans. So if you want to come check out my stream, I'd really appreciate that. Notifications for those will be on my Discord and Twitter as well, but typically I'll be doing them evening in Eastern time slot. Thank you again to everyone.
Siren Song isn't busted because of husks, it's busted because it skills HP of 1 drops. Remove the HP skilling, the card is mad. Exactly. No, I 100% agree with that. If the health is gone from Siren Song, entirely fine. 100%. We see that with Allure too, right? Like Allure is exactly the card that gives a husk +1/+0, or the next husk you summon. I don't know why suddenly we're going into that direction again, where we get like game-long value from a card. We've seen it from cards like Val Temple too. Val Temple was like so ridiculous for such a long time. And Val Temple also got the HP removed. It became an unplayable card right after, but for good reason. If we take off the 1 health, then playing Siren Song on turn 4 or turn 3 and summoning a Divine Clerk right after makes it a 4/2 and not a 4/4. There's a more specific Nami on spell, that's what Siren Song is? Oh yeah. We've seen it with Nami too, exactly.
Only war can bring me Balkok.
Strategist.
Strateg1ST_ gifted a tier 1 sub to GrapLR.
GrapLR, thank you for gifting a sub to Grappler Strategist. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, I think Roy summed it up really well. I don't think the solutions quite work. I also don't think a rework is going to solve the problem. I think right now, short term, we're just going to be looking at a Siren Song nerf, and I hope it's a very, very, very hefty nerf. As soon as you get a meta that plays 1 card in like 10 different ways, and that 1 card becomes like 25 or 30% of the meta, it's not fun for anyone to play. In my opinion, Heart of the Huntress was one of the coolest expansions they've ever done. The animations, the voices, the Shine On cinematic that we got, or the song or whatever, the reveals, the theme, everything was so magnificent. I've played League for 10 years and I had to look at that Nidalee abomination. The splash art is like, it's literally like a sexy Halloween costume. And then you look at Nidalee in Runeterra and she looks majestic. And then we get an expansion where none of these new cards are even playable or brought to tournaments. It's a real shame. Seeing such a cool expansion and then seeing almost none of the actual cards that define the expansion be played. I think it's a shame, but there's nothing that a small little patch can't fix that we are getting in a couple of days. So we're gonna look forward to that.